Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I will walk you through how I paneled, stacked, and decorated my PJ Masks cake. As you will see in a few minutes, I already went ahead and ganached my cake, and now I'm preparing my fondant to cut out the pieces so that I can panel my cake. The first piece that I will cut out is the top circle, and here I will use a cake board the size of my cake to guide me so that I can cut a circle to go on top of my paneled layer. After spraying the top of my cake with water, I'm going to take out the little pre-cut circle from my cake board to make sure that I'm able to measure the center of my cut piece of fondant. For my next paneled piece, I went ahead and used a piece of thread to measure the height and also around my cake to make sure I cut a piece that is big enough to cover my cake in one piece. This is important to make sure that you only have one place with one seam versus having many places that you need to worry about when decorating and covering up the seams and the pieces that you glued together. Once I had my piece all cut up and measured, I went ahead and placed a little bit of cornstarch all over the large of the inside of the piece to make sure that when you roll it onto your rolling pin, it doesn't stick to itself and it's easier for you to place onto the cake itself. The plastic rolling pin will help you to guide yourself and the fondant onto your cake, and then it will just ensure that it's a little bit more flush to the sides, the bottoms, and the tops of your cake. Once I had all of my fondant onto my cake, I went ahead and just smoothed the sides of it with a fondant smoother, and I cut out the excess to create a very straight seam so that I'm able to cover it a lot better with a lot less trouble. Before I move on to covering my next cake with fondant, I'm going to go ahead and cover my board, and I'm going to roll out a small ball of fondant into a sausage and form it around my cake. There's definitely a lot more techniques out there for covering your boards. This is just the one that works the best for me because I find that I use a lot less fondant and I have just one seam on my cake board versus other methods. And as you've seen in some of my previous videos, I like to cover the edges with ribbon, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. Now we are going to go ahead and do the exact same thing we did with our bottom tier with our top tier, and here I just went ahead and placed a little cardboard on the bottom to make sure that I don't cut through my rolling mat with my knife. Once our edges are all smoothed out, we will go ahead and move on to supporting our bottom tier for our top tier, and we will panel this little cake at the end. To support my cake, I like to use milkshake straws, also known as boba tea straws, and you can also use wooden dowels or plastic dowels. Knowing where to place your support is very important. What I like to do is I like to use a cake board the size of my top tier and lightly mark it around with a fondant tool on my bottom tier so I know where to place my support. For example, if I have a 6-inch tier, I do 4 support straws around my bottom tier and I distribute them evenly. Now that my bottom tier has support, I'm going to go ahead and place a little bit of ganache as my glue onto the top of my bottom tier to make sure that when I place my top tier, it stays secure and in place. For my top tiers, I always like to assemble once they are placed on top of the bottom tier. This is just what I like to do. You definitely don't have to work this way, and you can assemble your top tier before placing it onto your bottom tier. This is just something I prefer, and I decided to show you guys just to give you more options on what to do as far as assembling your cakes. The assembly of the top tier is exactly as I did with my bottom tier, so I'm going to go ahead and let you watch and make sure that if you do have any questions regarding the top tier, you leave them in the comments below. To cut off any excess at the top, just make sure that you use a very sharp knife, and if you have to, dip it into cornstarch to make sure that it doesn't snag any of your edges. To glue my decorations, I am using royal icing. You can also use edible glue or piping gel to do this. And for my skyline, I went ahead and printed these on an edible image printer and on edible paper, and I went ahead and cut out every single little building to make it look like a skyline on my cake. You can also hand draw them or use fondant cutters or cookie cutters to do this effect. And for the PJ masks, I actually have a video on how to make each of them, which I will be uploading very soon. I hope this video was very helpful for you, and don't forget that if you do have any questions regarding any of the techniques used here or any of the products, you can always leave them in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!